So we got three really big stories today, all of which are, to varying degrees, good news. We got Martin Shkreli, the man who has been slandered by the media for the better part of a decade as the Pharma Bro, a real gamer who is deserved of great admiration. He's out of prison. We'll get to that. The rally in the stock market that lasted, the end of last week to the beginning of this week, it's already over. The people who are hoping, the bulls who are trying to rally off of support at around 4,000 on the S&P, looks like that was a fake out, not a breakout. And third, old Elon Musk says he's going to vote Republican now, which makes me more suspicious of him than ever. So I guess we'll start with Shkreli. Martin Shkreli, for those of you who don't know, he was a hedge fund manager, pretty young guy. Not like the other hedge fund guys. He wasn't like a fleece vest kind of douche. He didn't have the look of one of these, hotshot Wall Street types. He just looked like a nerd. Frankly, he was a true gamer. Someone who really, he spoke for all of us in his interviews. He gave great interviews. He had great lines. And he jacked up the prices astronomically of life-saving drugs that were owned, by his company. And for this, he was hated. Over a period, I believe, 6 or 7 years, the cost of an EpiPen rose from $100 to, I think it was $600. So it went up by $500 over that time period. He was ridiculed for this at the time. People thought, oh my gosh, you're so evil. How could you do this? It saves people's lives. Why would you raise the price of things that people need to live? And, he made the case, I think quite effectively, that, hey, the EpiPen, it's $600. That's a great deal. If it weren't for the EpiPen, you'd have to go to the hospital. And the ambulance trip alone back then would have ran you around $1,000. That was his quote. Just the ambulance trip, and then you've got all the fees associated with actually setting foot into a hospital. The emergency room fees, all that. You could spend $10,000. And the EpiPen, hey, it was $600. But at the end of the day, Shkreli could set the price for whatever he wanted, because that's how intellectual property works. I'm not a fan of intellectual property. I think it's bullshit. I think it's not real. It's just a monopoly. But if the government's going to grant a monopoly to this company that is then going to come, under the control of Martin Shkreli, that's the risk they run. Maybe they shouldn't be granting monopolies. And also there was some AIDS drug that he raised the price of, I think it was $13.50, and he raised it to $13.50. He raised the price to $750. And it's like, well, hey, maybe you don't get AIDS next time. That was basically his response. The guy is like a real-life joker. And so I don't know what kind of killjoy, could not like this dude. Because everything he did, no matter what you hate, hate on him all you want, is 100% legal. He was taking advantage of what is, in my opinion, a fundamentally corrupt and unjust system of intellectual property and patents and all these things. I don't believe in them. They were invented by the King of England. They were always, they come out of the monopoly statutes. It was always understood, hey, this is the king granting somebody a monopoly on something. Just like, hey, you've got the monopoly on the windmill in your town, and so everybody has to bring their grain to you to be milled. And I, the king, proclaimeth. It's the same idea as giving Martin Shkreli a monopoly over the EpiPen. Or a monopoly over, I think it was called Diaprim or something, the AIDS drug. Don't hate the player. Hate the game. Martin Shkreli just played the game well. And so was the result, of all of this hate campaign against Martin Shkreli and his business practices, did that result in people changing the system? Did we abolish intellectual property in the United States? Do we have, greater prevalence of generic drugs now, more quickly than we used to here in the U.S.? Do we have cheaper drug prices? No. Everything's gotten worse since the media scapegoated Martin Shkreli. And, nothing has changed for the better. It's only gotten worse. And where's he been for the last 6 years? Oh, that's right. They locked him up in prison on trumped-up charges. Martin Shkreli did nothing wrong. He was one of the original victims of cancel culture. Literally. I mean, they canceled him all the way into prison on fake charges of securities fraud. I mean, if these people think securities fraud is so bad, Elon Musk would have been the one who got 6 years in prison. Elon Musk is the one who tweeted, "I'm thinking of taking Tesla private, funding secured." Of course, the price of Tesla went to the moon on that news because people are anticipating, oh my gosh, Elon's got, investors lined up to take Tesla private. So if I own Tesla stock, I can basically demand whatever I want. I can get paid a bunch of money in this buyout. But it was all a lie. Elon Musk drove people into buying Tesla, which inflated his net worth based on a lie. That's the definition of securities fraud. Now, he can say, oh, well, I was high, I didn't mean it, it was an April Fool's joke. And so maybe it'll be his defense in court. But at the end of the day, securities fraud is just a charge to be levied against people who the regime wants to cancel from within the financial community. And so the reason why Elon Musk is not in prison is not because he didn't commit this, crime of securities fraud that the federal government thinks is so evil. No, the reason why he's not in prison is because he is Elon Musk. And the reason why Martin Shkreli went to prison is not because he committed this crime that the federal government thinks is so evil called securities fraud. Martin Shkreli went to prison because he is Martin Shkreli. He's a martyr, and he is a icon, an inspiration to gamers everywhere. He is Joaquin Phoenix's Joker personified. He is the real-life Joker. Nick Fuentes, Neko Fuentes, I'm sorry, the Catboy cult leader, likes to fancy himself as a real-life Joker. He's not. He'll never be 1% of the man that Martin Shkreli is. So, we're talking about a finance guy, Martin Shkreli, and we also talked about Elon Musk. So, that also happens to tie perfectly into either one of the other two topics. I think I'll go with Musk. I don't have much to say on him, so we can kind of breeze through him, and I'll get to stocks and the financial market. Musk came out today and said, hey, I used to vote for Democrats because they were the kind people. Which, I guess if you're like an Obama-era liberal, you could make that case. If you're one of these people who bought into the Obama aid campaign, that was it. Hope and change. I want to be kind. Just be nice. Remember those just be nice bumper stickers that liberals used to have? You don't see those too often anymore. But anyway, now that Democrats are no longer kind, I guess, in the view of Elon Musk, he's going to vote Republican. And he's saying, now watch, all the libtards are going to be triggered. This, to me, it just looks too much like bait. And I'm not going to take the bait. I'm not going to come out and go, oh, based Elon, he's going to vote Republican, like as if voting Republican is based. I don't know exactly what kind of game that Elon is playing. I mean, I heard a pretty good case for somebody that, hey, if the Antichrist was alive today on this planet, wouldn't he try to not alienate either political side and ingratiate himself and be like someone who's like, hey, I voted Democrat my whole life and now I'm voting Republican, and try to play both sides and seem like, lay enlightened centrist? Yes, but I don't think that he's necessarily the Antichrist. He's not that bad, but I don't know what he is, but I don't trust him. I still don't. I still think that Tesla is a fake company with a bad product. It's not the worst product in the world, but it's a way their stock is absurdly overvalued. And, well, I guess even Musk himself has admitted that in the past. I mean, if you're the CEO, you can't talk down your own stock price too much, because that would be an infringement of your fiduciary duty to your shareholders. But Musk trying to play this role of, hey, those Dems are kind of going crazy. It just, I don't want to say I don't. I don't buy it. I don't buy it one bit. And it's not that I think that he's some, secret, candy-ass libtard. That's not what I'm getting at all. I also don't think that, he's the next Trump. Although, you know what? Maybe that's exactly what he is. Trump is someone who, still at his heart, is the same person that he was, 10, 20 years ago. He has pretty much the same social views, the same views on most issues. I guess now he has to be publicly pro-life. But, we can't take that super seriously coming from Donald Trump. But nevertheless, he has done a lot. He has been a much more effective leader for people on the right than any Republican president in many, many decades. He's arguably the best leader of the American right since Senator Taft. Trump has done quite a bit to try and revive the pre-war spirit of the Republican Party. And I never would have anticipated that when Trump first came on the scene and started courting Republican voters. I remember I was at a Republican Party function back in, I think it was 2012. And even back then, Trump was, mulling about the idea of running for president, as he kind of did every 4 years for a long time. He talked about it back in the 90s, too. And, here Trump was at a Republican Party function, and I was I found it so strange. I don't even remember what he said, frankly. Wish I could find a video of his speech. Maybe I'll go back, because I just remember sitting there. Now, I was a young kid at the time. I was a teenager. And I remember thinking, why is Trump here? What does Trump have to do with, conservative politics in this country? This is The Apprentice guy. And I love The Apprentice. It was a good show. I liked Trump as a character. He was entertaining. But I didn't understand what he was getting at. I was confused. And that's kind of how I feel now about Musk. I don't know what his angle is. And, as the years went on, I think it took me, starting in 2012, what was it, maybe a good 6 years before I even started to really warm up to Trump's, the idea of Trump being a political force. And I never went full Trumper. Still am not, and I won't ever, because I'm never going to go full, pro anybody. I'm not a team player at heart. That's just not who I am. I don't like this idea of following a leader. It's just, it feels weird and culty to me. But that doesn't mean that I can't acknowledge someone's existence as being a net positive and appreciate that their existence in their position in society has protected me somewhat from other more sinister people who in their absence would occupy their position. And so that's the approach that I take to Elon Musk. I don't trust him. I don't see him as my friend or as my ally. But assuming he's not a 100% Trojan horse, assuming that there is some genuine sentiment behind his words, he may just be an oligarch who insulates me personally, and the people who I know, my community, from other more sinister people who would occupy his position of power in his absence. And it's impossible to talk about Elon Musk potentially wading into Republican politics. Now, again, this is not Elon. I don't think Elon's going to run for president. That's not what I'm getting at, just to be clear. When I say Elon being the next Trump, I just mean, a guy who's famous outside of politics and has a lot of money. Of course, Elon has much more money than Trump could ever dream of. Saying, you know what, I feel more at home with the red team than the blue team. That's all that Elon said. It was nothing very profound. All he said was, you know what, I generally felt myself aligned with the blue team, and now I think they've gone a little off the rails, so I'm probably going to go play in the sandbox with the red team. It's about as mild of a political statement as you could make. Totally banal. But I would imagine that this is heavily influenced by his good friend Peter Thiel, also of PayPal fame. And since Elon really, if he really is moving in that direction, I would imagine, once he started to shift, Thiel will probably do his best effort to drag Elon as far into the game as possible. And Peter Thiel is someone who I also have always been very skeptical of. I am absolutely petrified of Palantir, which is a Thiel-owned company. It's basically a private intelligence agency, and they market themselves as pretty much a subcontractor to intelligence agencies, saying, "Hey, here, let us spy on people for you." And that's just scratching the surface. I'm sure Peter Thiel has many other terrible things, surrounding him, but he is nevertheless an oligarch on the right. So all in all, I thought talking through this, thinking out loud, would help me come to somewhat of a conclusion, but I really don't. And I think it'll probably be years, judging on my experience with Trump, before I really figure out what to think of Musk. Now remember, the Twitter deal hasn't even gone through yet. I do think that it probably will eventually go through. I think that Musk is definitely using the bot thing to probably try and get a better deal. But remember, when it came to Tesla, funding secured, and I'm using scare quotes there, funding secured was a lie, or it was a joke, depending on whose side of the story you want to take. At this point, Elon Musk has not bought Twitter. He has not taken it private. Those are two things that he said he'd do with Tesla. Never came to pass. So, you still have to, until the day that the deal closes, there's going to be a chance that this doesn't happen. And if it doesn't, that just is going to raise even more questions. What is Musk doing? Why is he doing it? Is he good? Is he bad? I think he's probably a little bit of both. And like with Trump, I think we really are just going to have to take him on a case-by-case basis. I think that the worst-case scenario is that Musk uses his outreach to the right, his acceptance of their existence, just coming out and saying, "Hey, Republican voters, I acknowledge that you are real people who live in this country." I do worry that could just be a Trojan horse for his transhumanism project. I mean, I think that it is a pretty short leap from Elon Musk owns Twitter. Twitter's now good. They're kind of conservatives. They don't ban me to, Elon Musk is selling this Neuralink thing. Well, he'll never deactivate my brain. He'll never censor my thoughts if I take the Neuralink and let him put the chip in my brain. I know we're still many years away from that, but it's something that continues to concern me. So I think I'll leave that there. The last story of the day to discuss is the fake out breakout. The bounce, the dead cat bounce off of 4,000 on the S&P. Last week, the S&P dipped below 4,000, I think for a couple of days, and then there was a pretty violent rally over a 4-day period, like Thursday, Friday last week, and then Monday, Tuesday this week. Today's Wednesday, I believe, and it all came crashing down. The NASDAQ collapsed, I think, 5%, the S&P over 4%, and we're now looking at, I think it was, last I checked, closed 39.23. The low of the day was 39.11, so we were technically off the lows. But when you see a clear rejection of the testing of that 4,000 support, or that 4,000-ish, support. I'm not looking at charts. I'm just looking at, big numbers. I don't want to mislead and think like I'm looking at a chart and I said, 4,000 was key support. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is it's pretty clear last week. 4,000 psychologically is a big number, because that's to me, that's what I really think of technicals as. I think that it's not so much even about the chart. I think it's about the psychology. And psychologically, 4,000 is a major number on the S&P. There are people who once the S&P had was trading with a 3 handle, they said, you know what? I think that's a good deal. I want to buy the dip. And they bought the dip, and they bought it up over 4,000 again. And then once it got over 4,000, they quit buying because these people were speculating, saying, hey, you know what? I think it was a good deal under 4,000. And so once it got above 4,000, those people quit buying, and you wanted to see, okay, is there going to be now, organic buying that comes in? Is that going to be our new price? Is there support here? And what we found is that there was no support. The people who came in and nibbled thought, hey, I'm getting a good deal, S&P under 4,000. They bid the price back over 4,000, and then it collapsed immediately. That's the way I see it. This is not investment advice. I'm not a swing trader. I would never try and do that. But this is just sort of common sense social psychology. So what we want to see is a clear rejection of 4,000. We want to see, those of us who are bearish, and I'm bearish for political reasons, basically. Well, not really political reasons, but personal reasons. I think assets are overvalued. It's making my life difficult. I think it makes just society not function right when you have overinflated assets. I'm not going to apologize for wanting the stock market, the bond market, and the real estate market to crash. I want them to revert to the mean. Hell, I'd be even happier if they went below the mean. I mean, we've been above the mean for over a decade. Why don't we go below the mean for over a decade? And so I want a clear rejection of 4,000, and I want to see the stock market, at the very least, I want to see it back where it was a couple of years ago in 2020. And people forget, in March of 2020, the S&P was at 2,200. All these companies, the economy, there's not been that much growth since then to justify, the stock market doubling. If you look at the all-time highs, they were double the bottom in 2020. And the stock market in 2020 was already overvalued by, just using historical metrics. At that point, we had been in a decade-long bubble. And then we went and doubled that. So this market needs to crash, and needs to crash hard. And I'm concerned because it looks like, at least for now, the 10-year has topped. The 10-year has remained stubbornly below 3%. It went above 3% briefly a week or two ago. But it's not going above that. We're not heading to 4%. We're not even getting to 3.25% or 3.5%. It almost, it seems like the Fed's future rate hikes have already been priced into the 10-year in interest rates. And if interest rates don't continue to rise, who knows? Maybe they will. Maybe we will see the 10-year spike again the next time that the Fed hikes. Maybe it's not priced in, but considering where the 10-year was before the Fed tightening cycle began, where it is now, and where the Fed tightening cycle will probably end, interest rates may have already peaked. And that's just not good enough in order to destroy these asset prices. I really, I know it's a pipe dream, but I want to see Volcker level interest rates. That would give me some hope for the future. But you know what? I don't want to eulogize the bear market yet, when really it has barely begun. I need to give it a chance. Maybe we will get down there, but stock market is not the economy entirely. Even if the stock market does crater briefly, if it comes back quickly enough, the overall economy, and home prices, for example, and then the price of everything else, inflation in general, we might not get back to where we were a few years ago. In fact, I have very little hope that we could return to that level of prosperity and affordability of anything, let alone housing. But there is still some hope. And I'm holding out hope. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.